On May 20th, I awakened to a small patch for them fighting HERDS. As I read through it, I was really happy about all the changes and bug fixes. But then, almost at the end of the notes, I saw something that really bothered me. Official Pixel Lobby servers now have designations for skill levels: Beginner and Advanced. Right now, it's just the name of the server and nothing else. This feature will be expanded in a future patch. I understand the intention behind this, and at face value, it seems like a reasonable thing to do, especially with the influx of new players we're getting after 1.0, and after the big EVO announcement. But in my opinion, this is actually a pretty bad idea. I've talked about this at length on my stream since that patch came out, and this video is an attempt to put those rants in a better structured form. So, without further ado,
here's the beef!
The first thing that really bothers me about it is the fact that we are segregating the player base. Them's Fighting HERDS has a pretty small player base, even after the influx of new players we're getting. So separating an already small player base just creates a divide which will inevitably lead to some players seeing things in terms of us versus them. I want to make it very clear that I'm not saying everyone is going to think like that, but some people will. And it usually ends up being the very vocal ones, which could very well become a bigger issue with time and cause an even bigger divide. I am honestly afraid it might cause the newer players to have a warped perception of the more experienced players as a group of elitists. And it might also intimidate a bunch of them into never going into the advanced lobbies or even interact with the people who play in there. Which would be a shame since most of the existing player base is actually comprised of really nice and really chill people. While the game has been out on early access for 2+ years, the player base during that time was very small. The community didn't really begin in full until after the release of 1.0. The worst thing we can do right now is divide it into two camps. If we want the community to grow and thrive, and I sure as hell want that, what we need right now is for everyone to be together, to play together, and to interact, so that we can really foster and cement the sense of community. Another big issue is the fact that, as of right now, there are only 2 skill levels: Beginner and Advanced. Advanced. While I'm sure we all know what beginner means, I feel Advanced is a more nebulous term, and I also feel it leaves the biggest chunk of the player base out. Let me explain. I'm sure most of you are familiar with this graph, the bell curve. Now, if we take the player base and distribute it so that the x-axis is the skill level and the y-axis is the number of players, we will get something like this. The beginners and the advanced players are a very small portion of the community. This will be the case in any community. The skill level of most of your players will lie somewhere in the middle. What lobby are they gonna play on? I have been playing the game for over 2 years, and while I'm certainly no beginner, I also don't consider myself an advanced player, which I'm sure is a sentiment echoed by most of the player base. What lobby are we gonna play on?
But Enma, right now there are way more newbies than experienced players. Surely that graph doesn't apply to the current community.
Well, listen, I've been streaming this game pretty much daily for 2 years. I have played a bunch of the new players these past few weeks, and a big portion of them are actually competent enough to not be considered newbies. Which shouldn't come as a surprise, considering that a lot of those players that we are getting are players who already have experience with fighting games in general, and they decided to come to TFH either because they saw it had just released and they wanted to try it out, or because they heard it was going to be at EVO and they wanted to give it a shot, or maybe both. Listen, what I'm trying to say is, this isn't their first rodeo. I'm not trying to say that there are no real beginners who have never played any other fighting games before and have no idea what they are doing. There definitely are. I have encountered them. But I think they are a minority right now, and that will continue to be the case going forward. And I strongly believe that isolating those players from the more experienced players will actually be more harmful to their development and overall enjoyment of the game. Don't get me wrong, I'm not arguing that new players need to play with the advanced players to improve. I think we can all agree that that isn't the case, and it's usually not fun for either of the players involved. But what I do believe is that new players have a lot to gain just from interacting with those of us who have been playing the game for a while. I see proof of this all the time on my streams. They can learn from watching us or from talking to us, and asking us the questions they have about the game and its mechanics. This accelerates their progress to a higher degree than someone who's just playing and interacting with other players who also have zero idea about how the game works. And before you know it, they're actually trading blows with people who have been playing the game since early access. These kinds of interactions also strengthen the sense of community in a pretty big way and leave everybody feeling better, and in the end, having more fun. A lot of people have raised the argument of advanced players are just stomping or bullying newbies whenever I talk about this. But as far as I can tell, most of the experienced/advanced players, including myself, we never ask newbies for a fight. If they happen to challenge us, sure, we'll take it. But we never initiate against someone we know is a newbie. From what I can tell, most of the more veteran players just stick to playing with each other, regardless of what server they are on. Of course, there's a couple toxic advanced players who will knowingly challenge a newbie and get a kick out of bullying them. But they are a very tiny minority. And the problem with implementing this skill lobby system is that players who actually enjoy doing that kind of stuff will always find a way of bypassing the system. Those kind of people are going to be creating Smurf accounts to join the beginner lobbies once an actual gatekeeping system is in place. Creating a Smurf account is super easy on Steam. With the library sharing system, you don't even need to buy another copy of the game. Just share the library from your main account with your Smurf account. And even if you did have to pay for another copy, that never stopped Smurfs on Overwatch. Listen, assholes will be assholes. And systems like these won't stop them. Only the community itself can keep them in check. On the other hand, what if a friend of mine wants to try out the game for the first time while he's over at my place? He's not going to be able to join a beginner lobby using my account, and is going to be forced to play against the advanced players. That certainly doesn't sound like a good first experience, does it? You might argue that I can just have them play against the CPU, but that is also a very bad representation of what fighting games are actually like. Playing against CPUs and real humans are two very different things, and I think most of us will agree that playing against humans is where the real fun of fighting games lies. Even though TFH does have a fantastic story mode, if you haven't played it yet, what are you even doing with your life? Go play it, right now! It's awesome, go!
Big deal. Just stick to unofficial lobbies, Einstein.
Well, there are several issues with that argument, but the most important one to me, and to this discussion, is the fact that most players will automatically gravitate towards the lobbies that say official on their names. We've seen this in practice for over 2 years, and it makes perfect sense. Imagine you just bought the game and boot it up for the first time, you decide to go online to play and hang out with the other players? Of course you're gonna click on the official lobbies. Why would you not? That sounds like the safest option. And they're also the ones that usually have people in them already. Now, imagine this. One day, after the patch that prevents people from joining the incorrect lobby drops, a newbie decides they want to go play online. Maybe they just got the game, this is the first time checking it out. They go into the server browser, and the only lobbies with players in them are the advanced ones. Advanced. What do? I guess they're shit out of luck? Guess they won't play today, huh? Yeah. Awesome. I know we already had lobbies that were meant for more serious players, but those are unofficial lobbies. But having the actual official lobbies gatekeeping the player base is not a good look. You might think I'm being overly dramatic about this, but I'm speaking from experience. I come from Team Fortress 2, which granted is a very different game, but the community got split into casual players and comp players. And even more subgroups that I wouldn't bother touching on because that's beyond the point. The point is, this created a very big divide between the groups. There's a lot of bad blood and toxicity between both groups. A very big portion of the competitive players actually did end up becoming elitist assholes. And the few who are trying to bridge the gap receive a lot of backlash from both groups. I know what this kind of stuff is like. It is not healthy for the players or the game. And I don't want Fightin HERDS to end up like that, because I really, truly love this game and I love the community. Main 6, look. I understand you guys are doing this with the best of intentions in mind. And many of the newbie players feel like this makes things more fair and it leads to better, more balanced matches for everyone. And while I agree it kinda does do that to a degree, I don't think this fixes what's actually causing the issue here. This is just a band-aid that doesn't really address the core problem at hand. I feel a better solution would be to educate the players on how to tell who is new or who is more experienced. A really nice tool we already have for this in the game is the playtime badges. I talk about those a lot on my stream, and something I've noticed is that a lot of new players, and even players who have been playing since the early access, don't even know what those are. If you don't know what I'm talking about, when you click on a player, you will see a badge to the left of their name. They have numbers from 1 to 5 in Roman numerals, and the highest level is a star, which is level 6. These badges tell you how much time a player has spent playing the game. Granted, that won't be a completely accurate way to gauge how skilled someone is, but in my 2 years of experience, it has always been a pretty damn good approximation. Level 1 or chocolate are players who have anywhere from 0 to 39 hours in the game. Level 2 or iron are players who have 40 hours. Level 3, bronze, are players with 80 hours in the game. Level 4, silver, have 150 hours in the game. Level 5, gold, have 300 hours in the game. And level 6, platinum, are players who have spent 600 or more hours in the game. If you're a newbie, you should try to stick to level 1, 2, maybe level 3 players. Level 4 players are usually a pretty good middle ground. They are usually competent. And then there's level 5 and 6. The gaps in playtime between 4 and 5 and 6 are bigger and can be harder to judge. But for the most part, you can assume 5s and 6s, they probably know what they're doing. The big issue with this system is that the game never tells you what those mean, or even that they exist at all. Another thing that's been really bothering me for a long time is that in the past, when you went into the challenge screen, you could see both your and your opponent's badge, which was really helpful when somebody you didn't know challenged you randomly, and you didn't get to see their badge because you were not the one who clicked on them. With that, you were able to set your expectations accordingly, or just refuse the match if you thought the skill gap was too big for it to be a fair match. But at some point, after the matchmaking update, they got rid of that, and that has been a big annoyance for me since then. Bringing that back and educating players about what it means would help a lot in allowing the newbies to get more fair matches. Listen, I understand you might have removed it because you were gonna do something different with the EXP ranks, but if the playtime badges are still showing on players' names, I assume the system is still there. Please bring them back. Another thing that would help a lot would be to also display those badges, or the portrait frames, on the player list. Then the players only need to press one button to bring up the player list and check what everybody's approximate skill level is, and see who would make the best match for them. This is a feature I've wanted for a long time now. I even made this mock-up of what that would look like. It actually looks kinda cool. Come on, Main 6. I'm sure this wouldn't be too hard to implement. Another feature I would really like to see is an icon that tells you who is in a fight right on the player list, which is something I also included in the mock-up. In my opinion, these things would help way more and would be less harmful to the community than separating the lobbies by skill levels. So I hope you guys at Main 6 at least consider it. Anyway, if you've made it to this point, wow, you're freaking awesome. This ended up being way longer than I had planned. So thank you very much for sticking around until the end. I think that's all I had to say about this. Please do let me know in the comments what your thoughts about this whole issue are. I guess now's the time where I'm supposed to shamelessly plug my stream? Yeah, like I mentioned earlier in the video, I have been streaming them Fighting HERDS for over 2 years now. If you want to hang out with me and my awesome community, you can catch the streams live on my Twitch channel. I stream TFH on Mondays, Wednesdays, Fridays, and Saturdays at around 5 PM UTC-7. And I also stream other games on Tuesdays and Thursdays. Link to my Twitch and other social media will be in the description below. Thanks for watching, I love you all, and I hope to see you again soon. Goodbye.
Epic.
Rein.